The groom hid his pregnant bride at the wedding, but he didn't expect the price he would have to pay. Imagine being on the happiest day of your life, dressed as a bride, surrounded by family and friends, and in a second, everything turns into a nightmare. Valeria never imagined that her husband, the man who promised to love her, would humiliate her with a slap in front of everyone. But what no one knew was that this was only the beginning. What came next was worse. Persecution, threats, lies that destroyed her career, and a powerful family willing to destroy her at any cost. But Valeria was not willing to give up, and when they tried to silence her forever, she did the unthinkable. What happened next? How did she manage to face her worst enemy and get her life back? Stay tuned until the end to find out. And tell us in the comments where you are listening to this story. The murmur of the guests echoed between the walls of the luxurious wedding hall. The air was filled with the sweet scent of white roses that decorated every corner, and a soft melody of violins enveloped the atmosphere with a dreamlike feeling. Valeria, dressed in white with her belly barely bulging from her pregnancy, smiled nervously as she held Raoul's hand. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but inside, something didn't feel right. Raoul's eyes reflected impatience throughout the ceremony. He had been clenching his jaw and squeezing Valeria's hand with such force that it hurt. He seemed annoyed, as if something wasn't going according to plan. Valeria tried to ignore it, but a pang of anxiety twisted in her stomach when the judge finally pronounced the long-awaited, "I do." Husband and wife, thunderous applause erupted in the room. Raoul pulled Valeria abruptly and kissed her with an almost aggressive intensity, leaving everyone speechless. She shuddered, feeling the control he exerted over her body. The guests stood up, toasted with champagne, and the music changed to a more festive rhythm. Valeria tried to relax. Maybe he's just nervous, she told herself. Maybe when this is over, everything will go back to normal. She couldn't have been more wrong. As they walked toward the main table, Valeria felt slightly dizzy. She had been exhausted for months by the pregnancy and the stress that Raoul caused her with his constant mood swings. She held onto her husband's arm to steady herself, but he pulled away abruptly. "Don't start with your nonsense," he whispered through clenched teeth, not hiding his annoyance. She tried to ignore him and smiled at the guests, but before she could sit down, Raoul took her by the arm and forced her to stand up again. First, the toast. The room fell silent as he took a glass of champagne and raised his voice. "I want to toast my beautiful wife, Valeria." The guests applauded and raised their glasses. Valeria forced a smile, but her heart ached. "Today, we celebrate the beginning of our life together, and I couldn't have chosen a better woman. Beautiful, intelligent, and above all, obedient." There were some uncomfortable laughs in the audience. Valeria felt a knot in her stomach because a marriage should be based on respect, trust, and the wife knowing her place. Raoul continued with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Some people exchanged uncomfortable glances. Valeria swallowed and wanted to say something, but before she could open her mouth, Raoul grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "And you, my love, would you like to say a few words?" he said in a tone so sweet, it made Valeria's blood boil. Her eyes searched the crowd for support, but no one dared to intervene. She hesitated, her voice sounding weak and muffled. Raoul frowned and whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "Don't make a scene, Val." She felt the threat in every syllable. It wasn't the first time he had spoken to her like that. It wasn't the first time he had made her feel as if her opinion didn't matter. But this time, there was something different. A burning sensation rose in her chest. Something inside her screamed that this wasn't right. Then the voice of her best friend, Andrea, broke the tension. "Cheers to the bride and groom!" Trying to divert attention, the entire room repeated the toast, and Valeria took advantage of the distraction to subtly slip away. But Raoul wouldn't let her. "We're not done," he whispered, clinging to each other rigidly. As soon as the music started, he leaned in and whispered, "You better smile." She tried to maintain her composure, but inside she felt trapped, suffocated. "Raoul, please," she whispered. "Don't make me look like an idiot at our wedding." The music continued to play. The guests looked at them with happy smiles, but no one could see what was really happening. "This isn't right," Valeria murmured. Raoul. He stopped abruptly in the middle of the dance floor. What did you say? Valeria's heart pounded in her chest. This isn't right. Raoul's expression changed in a second. His eyes darkened with fury, and then, without warning, he slapped her. The impact echoed throughout the hall. The sound of the slap cut through the music and the murmurs of the guests. A deathly silence took hold of the room. Valeria felt a burning sensation on her cheek. Her legs trembled, her vision blurred from the impact, and a scandalized murmur ran through the crowd. Andrea stood up in horror. Raoul shouted, but he didn't flinch, staring at her with an icy gaze, as if he had done nothing out of the ordinary. Valeria touched her burning cheek with trembling fingers, her eyes filling with tears, but not with sadness. It was anger, humiliation, the breaking point. She took a deep breath, and then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she removed the ring. The murmur grew louder. Raoul looked at her in disbelief. What are you doing? Valeria didn't answer. She dropped the ring to the floor. A metallic sound echoed as it hit the marble. Raoul tried to hold her again, but she pulled away abruptly, her eyes fixed into his, with a determination she had never felt before. I'm leaving, she said, and without looking back, she walked toward the exit. The doors of the hall swung open as Valeria, her wedding dress stained with tears, crossed the threshold. The guests were still in shock. No one moved. No one spoke. Raoul, his fists clenched, took a few seconds to react, but when he did, his voice resonated with fury. Valeria, come back here right now. She didn't stop. That was the last order she would ever take from him. The night breeze hit Valeria's face as she left the wedding hall. Her heels echoed against the pavement as she walked. Aimlessly, breathless and with tears burning her skin, she felt a stinging pain on her cheek from Raoul's slap. But what hurt the most was the emptiness that was opening up in behind her. The murmurs of the guests began to rise. She could hear hurried footsteps and voices calling her, but she didn't stop. Valeria! Andrea's voice broke through the noise of the crowd. A few seconds later, her best friend caught up with her, panting. Andrea, in her emerald dress, stood in front of her and held her face with both hands. My God, are you okay? Valeria opened her mouth to respond, but couldn't find the words. She felt her throat was closed, her body trembling, her heart racing as if she had run a marathon. Come with me, Andrea whispered, putting her arm around her shoulders. In the distance, the sound of Raoul's screams pierced the night. Valeria, don't be dramatic. Come back here. His tone was not one of supplication. It was not the voice of a repentant husband. It was an order, a demand, a reminder that he still believed he had power over her, but not anymore. Valeria looked toward the entrance of the hall and saw him. Raoul was there, his face red with anger, his fists clenched, his eyes fixed on her like daggers. Behind him, his mother Helena hurried to hold his arm and whispered something in his ear. Valeria felt a chill. She knew that if she stayed a second longer, if Raoul reached her, he would find a way to manipulate, make her feel that it was all her fault. She wouldn't give him that chance. Andrea, let's go. Her friend nodded and took her hand. They both ran to the parking lot where Andrea's car was parked. The lights from the hall illuminated the night, and the sound of the guests' murmurs and exclamations could still be heard in the distance. Andrea took out her keys with trembling hands and unlocked the door. Get in, Valeria. She barely had time to close the door before Raoul appeared at the entrance to the parking lot, advancing furiously toward them. Don't you dare get in that car! Andrea turned the key in the ignition. Damn it, Valeria, he's coming! Start the car, Valeria! The engine roared, and the tires screeched against the asphalt as Andrea stepped on the gas. In the rearview mirror, Raoul's figure grew smaller as he shouted insults and threats into the air, but Valeria didn't look back. Not again. The highway stretched out in front of them, lit by the car's headlights and the flickering glow of the city in the distance. Andrea kept both hands firmly on the steering wheel, but her breathing was heavy, as if she were holding back her anger. After a few minutes of silence, she spoke. I can't believe it. That jerk. How the hell did you dare to marry him? Valeria closed her eyes tightly. I don't know. Yes, you do. Andrea glanced at her sideways. Because he wasn't always like this, was he? Valeria felt a lump in her throat. She knew exactly when Raoul had started to change, or maybe he had always been like this, and she just never wanted to see it. At first he was charming, attentive, a businessman with an irresistible smile and sweet words. He promised her a future together and swore eternal love. He made her feel special. And then, little by little, the control began. Opinions about how she should dress, criticism disguised as concern, isolation from her friends, hurtful comments, veiled threats, until one day it stopped being just words. "God, Valor, he slapped you at your wedding," Andrea whispered, her voice broken with disbelief in front of everyone. Valeria pressed her lips together. "I don't want to talk about it. Where do you want silence to take you?" It lingered for a moment. Valeria felt a knot in her stomach as she realized she had no answer to that question. She had no home, no plan. The only thing she had was the certainty that she couldn't go back. Andrea seemed to read her mind and sighed. "I'll take you to my house. You can stay with me as long as you need." Valeria felt a pang of relief. "Thank you, Andrea." She reached out and squeezed her hand. Force. The walk to Andrea's apartment passed in silence. When they arrived, Valeria felt overwhelmed by exhaustion. Her friend made her some hot tea and lent her some pajamas. But Valeria could barely drink a couple of sips before collapsing on the sofa, with swollen eyes and an exhausted body. Hours later, a sound woke her up. Andrea's phone was vibrating insistently on the coffee table. Valeria half opened her eyes and sat up with difficulty. She looked at the screen, missed calls from an unknown number. She didn't need to guess who it was. Her skin bristled when she saw that there were text messages. "Raoul, do you think this is over? Raoul, you are my wife. You can't just run away. Raoul, come home. Don't make this more difficult." Valeria's stomach churned. Andrea moved into the next room and came out with her hair tousled and a sleepy expression. "What's going on?" Valeria showed her the screen. Andrea took it and frowned. Valeria felt her heart pound, and then the vibration returned. But this time it was another number. Andrea slid the screen to see the notification. Elena, Raoul's mother. Valeria felt a chill run down her spine. She knew this wasn't over. She knew it was just beginning. "Don't answer," Andrea whispered. But Valeria already knew what would come next. The pressure, the blackmail, the fear, and worst of all, Raoul would not give up. The sun was just beginning to filter through the curtains when Valeria opened her eyes. Her body was tense, exhausted, as if she had not slept at all during the night. Her mind had been a whirlwind of memories, anxiety, and a latent fear that coiled in her chest like a snake. Next to her, on the nightstand, Andrea's phone vibrated again. Valeria didn't have to look at the screen to know it was Raoul, maybe Elena, or both. She sat up slowly, feeling the pressure in her belly, her baby. A pang of anguish ran through her. It wasn't just her running away. It wasn't just her facing this. Andrea appeared in the doorway, disheveled, with dark circles under her eyes, and a cup of coffee in her hand. "They're calling again," she murmured. Valeria nodded silently. "I didn't answer. I won't. But you have to decide what to do now." That was the hard part, because she had no idea what to do. Everything in her life, everything she had built in recent years, was intertwined with Raoul. Her apartment, her job, even her bank account was largely managed by him. The thought made her sick. "I have to talk to my family," she said at last, her voice raspy. Andrea handed her the phone. "Call your mother." Valeria hesitated for a moment, but then took the phone and dialed. She listened to the tones ringing, holding her breath. Her mother answered on the third ring. "Valeria, my love, what happened?" As soon as she heard her mother's voice, all the self-control she had been maintaining collapsed. Valeria let out a sob and felt her strength leave her. "Mom, my God, are you okay? We left the wedding thinking that everything was fine, but then Andrea called us. I can't believe what happened. Where are you with Andrea? I'm coming to get you right now." Valeria closed her eyes tightly. Her mother was a strong woman, but there was a note of pain in her voice that made her feel guilty. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't say that. You have nothing to feel guilty about. The only person who should be ashamed is that bastard. Stay there. Don't move." The call was cut off, and Valeria dropped the phone onto her lap. Andrea watched her silently for a few seconds before sitting down next to her and taking her hand. "We'll get through this. Okay. Valeria looked at her and nodded, although inside she wasn't sure how. The sound of the doorbell broke the calm. They both jumped. Andrea frowned and got up immediately. Are you expecting someone? Valeria shook her head. Andrea went to the door, looked through the peephole, and her face, Valeria's heart, raced. Don't open it. Of course I'm not going to open it, Andrea snapped. Raoul banged on the door. I know you're in there. Valeria's voice sounded serious and irritated. Don't make this more difficult. Andrea crossed her arms and didn't respond. I'm not leaving until we talk. Silence hung heavy in the room. Raoul continued banging, each time with more force. Valeria. Open this door. Andrea looked at Valeria with eyes filled with fury. If you don't leave in a minute, I'll call the police. The banging continued for a moment longer, then silence. Valeria held her breath. Andrea looked through the peephole and pursed her lips. She left, but Valeria knew that wasn't true. Raoul never left. An hour later, her mother arrived. As soon as she saw her, Valeria felt a new rush of emotions. Her mother wrapped her in a tight hug, her hands running through her hair with the desperation of a mother who needs to make sure her daughter is okay. We're going home, she said without hesitation. Valeria said goodbye to Andrea with another tight hug, and then got into the car. The trip to her parents' house was long and silent. Her mother was focused on the road, her brow furrowed, her jaw clenched. Dad wants to kill him, she finally muttered. Valeria let out a bitter laugh. It's not worth it. Her mother glanced at her sideways. No, but it is worth making sure he never touches a hair on your head again. When she arrived, her father was already waiting for her at the door. His face was hard, but as soon as he saw her, his anger faded a little, and he wrapped her in another tight hug. You're home. No one can touch you here. That night, Valeria slept in her old room, surrounded by the familiarity of her childhood. But the peace was short-lived. Elena called. Her mother answered. Leave her alone, Elena. There was a tense silence on the line. This is a mistake. Marina, Valeria is exaggerating. Do you really think it's a good idea for her marriage to end like this? Was it a good idea for my daughter to run away from her wedding because her husband humiliated her in front of everyone? You don't understand, Elena. You're the one who doesn't understand. Don't call again. If you were in this moment, would you stand with Valeria or do everything to save the marriage? Tell me in the comments whose side you're on. Her mother hung up, but Val felt a chill down her spine because if Elena was already involved, this wasn't going to end with a simple phone call. The next few days were a roller coaster of emotions. Raoul stopped calling her, but that only made her more nervous. Then came the visits from her mother. Elena showed up at the house in her elegant designer dress and fake smile, holding a cup of tea as if she were paying a friendly visit. Valeria, honey, listen to me. This can be fixed. There's nothing to fix, Valeria replied coldly. Elena sighed dramatically. I know you're upset. I know Raoul made a mistake. He slapped me at my wedding, and he regrets it. But the divorce, the scandal, can you imagine what people will say? Valeria looked at her incredulously. Is that what worries you, Helena? Elena narrowed her eyes. I'm worried about your future. If you insist on this whim, things could complicate things for you. The tone of her voice made Valeria feel a twinge of warning in her stomach. You're threatening me, Elena smiled. I just want to help you think things through. Valeria stood up. There's nothing to think about. Get out of my house. Elena looked at her for a long moment, the smile still on her face. I hope you don't regret this, Valeria. When she left, Valeria felt the tightness in her chest. Andrea was right. Raoul hadn't left. He was just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Days passed, but the feeling of danger never went away. Valeria remained alert, constantly checking her phone, making sure the doors were locked, avoiding going out alone. Raoul hadn't contacted her directly again, but Valeria knew that didn't mean he had given up, and she was right. One afternoon, while helping her mother wash the dishes in the kitchen, her father entered with a frown and an envelope in his hand. This came for you. Valeria quickly dried her hands and took the envelope. When she opened it, she felt a chill run down her spine. It was a court summons. Raoul had requested an attempt at reconciliation before the divorce. It can't be, her mother murmured, snatching the document from her to read it better. What the hell does he want now? Valeria couldn't stop staring at the sheet of paper between her fingers. "It's just a ploy," said her father. His face hardened. "An attempt to get you to come back." And he was right. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning at an office in the city center. Valeria didn't want to go, but her lawyer explained that she was legally required to attend the first conciliation hearing. Friday came too quickly. Andrea accompanied her, holding her firmly as they waited in the room. Valeria's heart was pounding in her chest. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. Then the door opened. Raoul entered with a confident stride, dressed in an impeccable suit, with that smug expression he always had when he wanted to appear in control. Behind him, like a shadow, was Elena. Valeria felt nauseous when she saw her. This was supposed to be a meeting between her and her husband, but not her mother-in-law. She wasn't willing to be left out of the game. Raoul looked at her with an amused smile. "How nice to see you, dear." Valeria did not respond. The lawyer began the proceedings, but Valeria could barely concentrate. Every word Raoul spoke was calculated. Every gesture was full of manipulation. "I know things got out of hand," he said in his kindest tone. "But Valeria, do you really want to destroy our marriage over one mistake?" Valeria felt a lump in her throat. It wasn't a mistake. It was a blow in front of everyone. Raoul sighed with feigned regret. "I was stressed. So much pressure. The wedding. Everything. It's not an excuse, but you know I love you." Valeria felt a chill. Elena intervened. "It's not just about the two of you, dear. What about the baby? Do you want him to grow up without his father?" Valeria felt anger boiling up inside her. "I'd rather he grow up without a father who sees him as a possession." Elena narrowed her eyes. Raoul leaned over the table. "Just think about what you're doing. People will talk. Your dreams, your career, everything can change if you make a bad decision." Valeria understood that this was not a reconciliation. It was a disguised threat. And then, without thinking too much about it, she did what they never expected. She stood up, took a deep breath, and said in a firm voice, "There is nothing to reconcile. I want a divorce." Elena blinked in surprise. Raoul stared at her as if he couldn't believe she was really saying those words. "Andrea, The lawyer took note. "In that case, we will proceed with the divorce proceedings formally." Raoul tensed up, as did Elena, but Valeria didn't give them time to react. She gathered her things and left the office with Andrea by her side. As they walked down the hall, Andrea whispered, "That was incredible." Valeria smiled weakly, but inside she knew that the battle was just beginning, because Raoul was not the kind of man who accepted defeat, and his next move would prove it. The following days passed with a deceptive calm. Valeria knew that something was coming. She could feel it in her skin, in the air that weighed heavily on her chest every morning when she woke up. Raoul had not given up, not after the humiliation he suffered when she refused to give in to the settlement. And then, the blow came. It all started with a simple email. Valeria was sitting at the dining room table checking her computer when she saw the notification. Her contract with Alfaro Publishing had been canceled. The coffee she was holding slipped from her fingers and fell onto the table, spilling the dark liquid everywhere. "Damn it!" she exclaimed, jumping to her feet. Her mother, who was in the kitchen, came over immediately. "What happened, Valeria?" She couldn't take her eyes off the screen. She opened the email with trembling hands. "We regret to inform you that due to circumstances beyond our control, we have decided to terminate the contract for the publication of your book. We appreciate your work and wish you success in your future projects." Valeria's world shook. It couldn't be. Not after all she had worked for this. Her book, the dream she had been building for years, was being taken away from her. She picked up the phone and immediately dialed Claudia's number, her editor. If this part of Valeria's story already makes your blood boil, hit the like button so more people can see how far Raoul and his family are willing to go. The phone rang several times before Claudia answered in a tense voice. "Valeria, tell me what's going on. They just canceled my contract." Claudia was silent for a few seconds. "It wasn't my decision. They forced me." The answer hit her like a bucket of cold water. "Elena," Valeria felt the blood drain from her face. "It can't be. I made calls, pressured the executives, threatened to close doors, and we were going ahead with your book. We couldn't do anything." Valeria slumped into her chair, feeling a lump in her throat. "I'm sorry," said Claudia. "I sincerely know this means a lot to you, but—" Valeria could barely hear her. Helena and Raoul were playing dirty. "Why?" she whispered, even though she already knew the answer. Because they wanted to break her. Because they wanted to show her that without them, without Raoul, she was nobody. Her mother took her hand tightly. "You're not going to give up. You hear me?" Valeria pressed her lips together. No, she wasn't going to give up. But this was only the beginning, because Raoul had an ace up his sleeve, and the next move would be even more cruel. The blow of her contract being cancelled still weighed heavily on Valeria when she received the news that would finish destroying what little she had left of her stability. Raoul had bought the publishing house when Andrea rushed into the house with the phone in her hand and her face full of fury. Valeria knew something was wrong. "Tell me this is a joke," her friend blurted out, throwing the phone on the table. The screen showed an article recently published in one of the country's most important business magazines. Raoul Montenegro, the new owner of Alfaro Publishing. Valeria's stomach immediately contracted. "No," she whispered, feeling dizziness take over her body. "He did it, the bastard. He did it." Andrea clenched her fists. "He bought the publishing house just to screw you over." Valeria felt the air become thick. Raoul had not only made sure to ruin her contract, he had taken over the company where she had built her career. It was a clear message. "You can't escape me." Valeria's phone vibrated. It was an unknown number, but she knew who it was. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello, sweetheart." Raoul's voice made her shudder. "Do you like my latest investment?" Valeria closed her eyes tightly. "Why are you doing this?" He laughed softly, as if they were having a trivial conversation. "I don't know why you're so surprised. You thought you could leave me and go on with your life as if nothing had happened." Valeria felt a knot of anger and fear forming in her throat. "You can't control me," Raoul sighed. "Don't be naive. What's happening to you now is only the beginning. It could be that no one in this industry will ever hire you again. I could destroy everything you've built." Valeria clutched the phone tightly. "You're a sick, sick little man, and you're my wife." His tone grew darker. "We haven't signed the divorce papers yet, and I assure you that if I want to, we never will." Valeria's heart pounded. "Let me go. Come back to me, and all this will disappear." The silence stretched on. Valeria felt her breathing quicken, her chest rising and falling with contained rage. And if you want more intense, real-feeling stories like Valeria's fight for justice, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Raoul let out a dry laugh. "Then get ready, love, because this is just beginning." The call was cut off. Valeria dropped the phone on the table and felt tears burning in her eyes. Andrea looked at her with concern, but also with a spark of determination in her eyes. "We're not going to let him win." But Valeria couldn't help wondering how much more destruction was Raoul willing to cause just to see her fall. She would soon find out, because he still had more cards to play, and the next one would be the cruelest of all. Valeria thought she had already seen the worst that Raoul and Elena could do, that they couldn't sink any lower in their sick desire to control her, that her ex-husband would tire at some point and leave her alone. But she was wrong, because the next day, the news exploded like a bomb. Valeria Ortega accused of plagiarism and editorial fraud. Her mother entered the room, her face pale, holding her cell phone with the screen open to one of the most viral news stories. Valeria took it with trembling hands and began to read. Sources close to Alfaro Publishing have revealed that writer Valeria Ortega faces serious accusations of plagiarism in her unpublished work. Internal documents suggest that the manuscript contained fragments copied from other works, which has led the publisher to cancel her contract immediately. Added to this are suspicions of financial fraud in the negotiation of the agreement, which could result in legal action against her. The Montenegro family, owners of the publishing house, have expressed their disappointment at this unfortunate situation. The room began to spin. "This can't be happening," whispered Valeria, feeling short of breath. Her mother sat down next to her, taking her by the shoulders. "Look at me, daughter. We know this is a lie. Raoul and Elena are behind this." Andrea burst into the house with her phone in her hand, and her face flushed with anger. Elena gave an interview, she exclaimed, throwing the phone on the table and playing the video on the screen. Elena's image appeared on a television news program. Her expression was one of sadness, as if she were disappointed rather than angry. It hurts us deeply to see Valeria in this situation. She was part of our family, and we wanted the best for her. But unfortunately, there are things we cannot ignore. The publishing house discovered irregularities in her manuscript, and although we tried to handle it privately, the situation has escalated. Valeria felt a burning sensation in her throat. She's a liar, but Elena hadn't expected her to do the right thing and take responsibility. We don't want to see her harmed, but there are actions that have consequences. Raul has been very patient and is still willing to help her if she is willing to rectify the situation. The video ended, and Andrea cursed under her breath. This is a trap. They want to force you to go with Raul. Valeria put her hands to her head. How can they do this? How can they make something like this up and have people believe it? Andrea exhaled in frustration, because Elena has power. She has contacts in the media and in the industry. She can manipulate what people see and what they believe. Valeria's phone vibrated. An unknown number. Andrea looked at her. Don't answer it. But Valeria already knew who it was. She clenched her jaw and slid her finger to answer. Did you enjoy the interview? Raul. His voice sounded relaxed, almost amused. What do you want, Val? Valeria felt the venom in her throat. Raul sighed. I want to help you, love. We can fix this. Everything can disappear if we do things right. Do things right. Valeria let out a bitter laugh. You mean go back to you and pretend you never hit me on my wedding day? Don't be dramatic. You know this got out of hand, but we can still fix it. I don't want to fix anything with you, Raul. He was silent for a moment. Then, get ready for war. The call was cut off. Valeria dropped the phone and felt her breathing quicken. Andrea took her hand firmly. We're going to fight. We won't let them win. Valeria looked at her, feeling the fire ignite inside her. Because she was going to fight. Raul and Elena thought they could crush her, but they were wrong. She still had a card to play, and this time she wasn't going to lose. The scandal had taken over her life in a matter of days. Valeria went from being an up-and-coming writer to the protagonist of a story of fraud and dishonor, carefully crafted by Raul and Elena. The headlines were brutal. The Great Lie of Valeria Ortega, writer fallen from grace, fraud, deception, and plagiarism. The dark past of Raul Montenegro's wife, victim or swindler. Every time she opened her social media accounts, she saw thousands messages of hate, insults, and mockery. People who had previously supported her now called her a liar and an opportunist. But the worst part wasn't the strangers. It was the people close to her who began to doubt her. Former colleagues, supposed friends, people who had worked with her at the publishing house, people who knew her talent, and yet chose to believe the story that Raul and Elena had constructed. Her phone rang. Tell me you have good news, Valeria. This is bigger than we thought. Her stomach clenched. What do you mean? The lawyer sighed. It's not just the accusation of plagiarism. They've submitted documents suggesting that you manipulated figures in your contract with the publishing house. They're accusing you of contractual fraud. Valeria felt a sudden dizziness. That's a lie. I know it is. But the prosecution is considering it. And if it goes ahead, they can open a legal case against you. Valeria put her hand to her mouth. Elena and Raul didn't just want to destroy her reputation. They wanted to see her in jail. Her mother entered the room and saw her pale face. What's wrong, Valeria? She could barely respond. They want to take me to trial. The silence in the room that night was deafening. Valeria could hardly sleep. Andrea and her mother took turns trying to calm her down and think of a strategy. But panic was eating away at her inside. That's when the unthinkable happened. The next morning, her phone vibrated with an unexpected message. Sophia, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Sophia, her former assistant at the publishing house, the same one who had worked with her for years before suddenly quitting when Raul bought the company. Valeria called her immediately. Sophia answered with a trembling voice. I can't talk much, but you have to know the truth. Tell me, the evidence against you is false. Valeria felt a chill run down her spine. She knew it. Elena forced me to fabricate the documents. She blackmailed me. She threatened me. I didn't want to do it. Valeria. But you were afraid. Valeria's pulse quickened. Can you prove it? There was a silence. Yes, I have copies of the original documents. I have emails, recordings. Valeria felt the air return to her lungs. Sophia, I need you to testify. Sophia hesitated. If I do this, Helena will destroy me. If you don't, she'll destroy me. There was a long silence. Finally, Sophia exhaled. See you tomorrow. The call was cut off. Valeria pressed the phone to her chest, feeling a ray of hope for the first time in weeks. Raoul had built a perfect lie, but now the truth was about to come out. Sophia arrived the next day with a pale face and red eyes from lack of sleep. She looked around nervously, as if she feared that someone would catch her at any moment. Valeria welcomed her into her parents' house, where her mother and Andrea watched her intently. Her lawyer was present, tape recorder in hand, ready to record every word. Sophia sat on the sofa, clenching her hands tightly. Tell me everything, Valeria demanded in a firm voice. Although inside, she was a sea of anxiety, Sophia swallowed hard and nodded. After Raoul bought the publishing house, Elena called me to her office and told me she had a special task for me. At first I thought it was something administrative task, but her voice trembled. But it was about you. Valeria exchanged a glance with her lawyer. What did he ask you to do? Sophia took a deep breath before continuing. He ordered me to modify files in your contract, add false clauses, alter documents to make it look like you had received improper payments, and then he gave me a manuscript by another author and told me to copy excerpts into your book to make it look like plagiarism. Valeria's stomach churned. Her mother let out a stifled sigh. My God. Andrea covered her mouth with her hands. Do you have proof? Asked the lawyer, leaning toward her. Sophia nodded and took an envelope out of her bag. Here are the original documents. I have copies of the emails Elena sent me with the orders. The lawyer took the envelope with great care. This is enough to destroy her case. Valeria felt a weight lift from her chest, but Sophia's expression showed no relief. I'm not finished. Everyone looked at her expectantly. Sophia swallowed hard. When I finished what they asked me to do, I tried to walk away, but Elena wouldn't let me. She watched me, threatened me, until one day she simply fired me. She threw me out as if I had never worked there. Valeria frowned. Why? Sophia looked at her fearfully. Because I knew too much. The silence became thick. The lawyer rubbed his chin. If you testify in court, we can prove that it was all a setup. Sophia took a deep breath. I'll do it. Valeria felt a chill. Elena won't sit idly by. Sophia looked at her desperately. I know. That night, Valeria couldn't sleep. She knew that Sophia was risking her life by coming forward. Elena wasn't a woman who left loose ends, and her fear was confirmed the next morning. Andrea's phone rang first, then Valeria's. A message. Sophia is in the hospital. Her apartment caught fire tonight. Valeria's world stopped. Andrea looked at her with a distraught expression. Elena did this. The air became heavy. Valeria felt her fear turn to rage. Raoul and Elena thought they could silence anyone, that they could destroy lives without consequences. But this time, they were wrong. Valeria wasn't going to stop. Not now, because the truth was about to explode, and no one could stop her. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and death. The air was cold, too sterile, but Valeria hardly noticed as she walked steadily down the hallways with Andrea by her side. Her chest rose and fell heavily, her mind still in shock from what had happened. Sophia was in the burn unit. Her apartment had been reduced to ashes in the middle of the night. The firefighters confirmed what Valeria already knew. The fire had been set deliberately. Helena had tried to silence her, and Valeria couldn't allow that. When she entered the room, her stomach churned. Sophia was lying in bed with bandages covering part of her face and arms. Her skin, once clear and smooth, was now reddened by burns. Her eyes were swollen and tired. They opened slowly when she saw them enter. I'm not going to stay silent, she whispered, her voice breaking. Andrea, standing next to Valeria, clenched her fists. That witch crossed the line. Valeria took Sophia's hand carefully, avoiding the bandaged parts. I'm going to make them pay. Sophia swallowed hard. I'm scared. Me too. she admitted. "But this time is different. This time we have a chance to win." Her lawyer arrived minutes later with the documents that would make Sofia the key witness against Elena and Raul. His hands trembled as she signed. But when she finished, her eyes reflected something Valeria had never seen in her before: determination. That night, Valeria didn't sleep. She sat in her room with her legs tucked up against her chest, every detail in her mind. She had come so far. She had resisted so much, but it wasn't over yet. Elena was like a wounded animal, dangerous and willing to do anything to survive, and Valeria knew she could still fight back. But the final move would not come from her. It would come from an unexpected place. The news broke the next day. Elena Montenegro, the untouchable woman, the queen of publishing power, was being investigated for corruption and financial fraud. Valeria woke up to the sound of Andrea's phone vibrating non-stop. Her friend entered the room, her face lit up by the reflection of the screen. "You have to see this," she said, opening an article from a renowned newspaper. "Montenegro scandal. Leaked documents on financial fraud, bribery, and tax evasion." Valeria leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the lines of text. How did someone leak all this to the press? Valeria felt her heart racing. The next day, the scandal was everywhere. Television programs, newspapers, social media. Everyone was talking about the fall of Elena Montenegro. Then came the moment no one expected. Patrol cars arrived at the Montenegro mansion in the morning, with journalists surrounding the property. Valeria watched the live broadcast. Elena appeared at the door in her impeccable white suit, her hair perfectly coiffed, and her wrists handcuffed. The reporters shouted her name, trying to get a statement, but for the first time in her life, Elena Montenegro was speechless. The police escorted her to the patrol car, and the cameras captured her frozen expression, without a hint of emotion. Her world, built on power, manipulation, and lies, was collapsing in front of millions of viewers. Valeria exhaled slowly. Andrea looked at her in disbelief. It was over. Valeria closed her eyes for a moment. For her, yes. But there was still one left. Raul tried to escape when the police came for him. He was no longer at home. Valeria knew he would not give himself up so easily, but the Montenegros had lost their power, and without Helena to protect him, Raul was found at the airport with a fake plane ticket and an altered passport. The images of his arrest also went viral. The man who once felt untouchable was handcuffed and escorted out of the airport like a common criminal. When the day of the trial arrived, Valeria sat in the courtroom with her back straight and her gaze steady. Sofia, still bearing the scars of her attack, testified without hesitation. It didn't take long to deliberate. Raul Montenegro and Elena Montenegro were found guilty. The sentences were harsh. Elena would face decades in prison for her financial fraud, and Raul would serve a long sentence for domestic violence, threats, and complicity in his mother's crimes. When the verdict was announced, Raul turned to Valeria with a dark look full of contained rage. "This doesn't end here," he muttered, before they took him out of the courtroom. But Valeria didn't feel scared. Not this time, because for the first time in a long time, she was free. The years passed. Valeria rebuilt her life from the ground up. She published her book with a new publisher, a story of resistance and struggle that became a success. She became a voice for other women who had gone through the same thing as her. And in time, love came knocking on her door again. An old friend from college reappeared with his warm smile and respectful gaze. He didn't rush her or pressure her. He was just there until Valeria felt ready to open her heart again. A new beginning, a life without fear, strong, full, free.